Good afternoon and welcome to the Midday News. Here's what we have in the bulletin. It cannot continue. Calls for urgent fix to overcrowding at Savana-la-Mar Public Hospital. Differing views on suggestions for temporary suspension of issuing building permits. And later in sports, Reggae Boys to play Canada in Nations League quarterfinal. Thank you for joining us. I'm Shane Masters and here are the details. There have been disturbances in correctional facilities across the island after correctional officers withdrew their service this morning. TVJ News has been informed that the correctional officers are protesting new salaries under the Public Sector Compensation Review Program. Chairman of the Jamaica Federation of Corrections, Arlingon Turner, spoke with our news center.
They are refusing to pick up duty as we speak. However, I think this would be sorted out as we have spoken to the officers in regards to where we are. They are quite understandable knowing where we are as unions. But the answers that they are seeking now is from the ministry. Why is this taking so long to be settled? When we look at what the compensation review entails, all who are in this group are placed at a particular space and point in relation to payments. However, the correctional officers are way below. And this is unacceptable, and we have been going to the ministry for quite some time, indicating, show us how you arrive at this document to say, well, then this is where we should be placed. We have not been successful.
Mayor of Savana-la-Mar, Bertel Moore, has added his voice to the resource constraints being experienced at the Lone Public Hospital in Westmoreland. But even as he called on the Ministry of Health to deal with the matter urgently, Minister Dr. Christopher Tufton is taking him to task over a promise to help. Bursting at the seams. That's how Chairman of the Westmoreland Municipal Corporation, Bertel Moore, has described the situation at the Savana-la-Mar Public Hospital. For months, there have been cries for assistance to alleviate the number of people turning up to the health facility and to reduce the number of social cases. But at the latest sitting of the Municipal Corporation, Mr. Moore again highlighted the crisis.
Tears come to my eyes after going into that room. I could see little boys, little girls, big men, women, all in a cluster, sitting beside each other in there. It cannot continue like that.
He says the situation is so grave that there is not even screens for patients.
And they were tying the lady, and she was left open to the public. There was not even a screen to put around the lady while they were tying her. We need to do something at the hospital. Like, no, it just cannot work like that.
He is therefore calling on Health Minister Dr. Christopher Tufton to address the situation with urgency. But in a social media post, Dr. Tufton stated that while he fully appreciates his worship's empathy, he said the mayor promised to create space for over 35 social cases taking up beds at the hospital, but to date, he hasn't. Mixed reactions this afternoon to suggestions for the Kingston and St. Andrew Municipal Corporation to temporarily suspend issuing building permits across the corporate area. It follows controversy surrounding an Integrity Commission report which flagged several breaches at an apartment complex developed by Water Commission President Mark Barnett. Speaking on Power 106's Current Affairs program, The Morning Agenda this morning, civil society advocate Carol Narcisse explained that strict actions must be taken in light of the report.
We really need to put a temporary halt on the issuing of permits until we can properly assess and overhaul the system. Otherwise, this city is going to be built out wall to wall, corner to corner, with buildings that are in breach of their permits and the laws.
However, President of the Incorporated Master Builders Association of Jamaica, Lenworth Kelly, does not support the temporary suspension of building permits within the corporate area.
I have a problem with that. The reason is that you can't just stop economic activity because we have issues with people who are corrupt.
Cabinet is to review the budget for the transformation of the education sector over the next 8 years. During a press briefing of the Education Transformation Oversight Committee, ETOC, this morning, Education Minister Favour Williams says the technocrats arrived at the figure following months of consultation. How much? Roughly $30 billion.
Still refining the budget, as you know, given this is over at least 8 years, then we have to see how it fits in to the annual budgets. 1.5% of GDP annually. Well, we have a GDP of about 15 billion USD. Well, when you convert it to Jamaican dollars, it's probably about 30 to 35 billion Jamaican dollars.
Chairman of ETOC, Dr. Adrian Stokes, is relieved. The budget is to implement the recommendations of the Professor Orlando Patterson-led report released in 2021. It's expected to address the issues facing early childhood, primary and secondary institutions, among other systemic issues facing the education sector.
To ensure the transformation effort will be funded not just for this year or the next, but importantly funded for multiple periods. Right? If you look at the plan that we have for the implementation of the recommendations, that plan goes or cuts across multiple periods, right? So it's important to ensure that we have that commitment from central government to provide the funds to the Ministry of Education to drive the transformation plan.
Now, the ETOC chairman says even as Cabinet mulls over the budget, work is being done in the meantime. A 2-year timeline has been established for the implementation of some of the recommendations. And Education Minister Favour Williams says more focus will be given to vending outside of school gates. The assertion comes on the heels of revelation that some vendors have been selling ganja-laced products to children. Kalisha Williams reports.
The vendor responsible for selling the ganja-laced sweets, which left 65 students at the Ocherias Primary School hospitalized, remains at large. But the police say the search continues. Security measures have been beefed up, but Education Minister Favour Williams says special attention must be given to vending outside school gates.
The issue of vending and what it is that's being sold to our children, we have to pay great attention to it at the school level, and to look at the whole business. But we want to keep harmful products out of the hands of our children.
The Prime Minister has since instructed the Ministers of Education, Investment and Commerce and Health to investigate and prepare a report on how the products are entering the island without authorization.
When you package things that look attractive for them and it looks like something they've had before, whether it be goldfish or gummy bears, and then they eat it and it has substance in it that's going to alter their perception, play havoc with their mental abilities, I have to be very concerned.
When pressed about whether the ministry intends to launch a public education campaign to raise awareness on the issue, the minister gave this response.
I'm sure that will come out of the meeting, the ministerial meeting that we are to have, because we have to give parents the proper tools, the proper knowledge, so that they can quickly identify, and we have to help the children as well in terms of what to look for when they look at these packages.
Kalisha Williams, TVJ News.
And it's time for a break here on the Midday News, but stay with us. More stories when we return. Welcome back to the Midday News. The Association of Principals and Vice Principals is calling for more strategies to curb violent tendencies within schools. The association says it is worried by the incidents as of late but not alarmed. More in this report.
Concerned but not surprised. When it comes to the issue of increased violence in schools, the Association of Principals and Vice Principals is not at all left asking how or why. Vice President Linton Ware says the answer is very obvious.
If you look at the level of crime and violence in our community, and what we need to be on, what we need to understand too, is that our children, they learn from us, the adults. You take, for example, the number of double and triple murder that we have seen in recent time. Our students are learning from our adults.
So if violence in schools is to be controlled, Mr. Ware said there will need to be a closer conversation with parents. But that's just a starting point.
We need to hold our parents accountable as well. But outside of that too, I think while it is that we teach math and English and chemistry and physics, it is going to be very important that we teach conflict resolution, where we teach our young people how to resolve conflict. Because where two or more persons gather, there's the potential for conflict. But while that is, and while we have the potential for conflict, is how we resolve the conflict.
Mr. Ware said values and attitudes are also lacking among the school-aged population and in the wider society, something that needs attention.
Those have been erased. And I think going forward, we will have to start with our young people, teach them values and attitudes so that we know how to appreciate each individual.
Also principal of Old Harbour High School, Mr. Ware said the institution undertook a 2-day initiative recently geared towards having more discourse about peace with students.
I invited all the Justice of the Peace, the parish of St. Catherine, to Old Harbour High School. And I said to our teachers, you will go to the classroom, but you will have with you the Justice of the Peace for 2 days. We had it on a Thursday and a Friday for 2 days. And the Justice of the Peace, they took the classes and they ensured that they communicate to our young people what it is to be peaceful and how it is that we're going to have peaceful conversation and communication. And that, may I share with you, our students appreciated it. As a matter of fact, our teachers appreciated it.
Kelisha Williams, TVJ News.
And it's now time for the Business Minute. Canada's annual inflation slowed to 3.8% in September. Looking at the month-over-month price movement statistics, Canada says that the Consumer Price Index was down 0.1%. Two of the Bank of Canada's 3 core measures of underlying inflation also decelerated. The CPI median edged down to 3.8% from 4.1% in August, while CPI trim decreased to 3.7% from 3.9%. And retail sales in the U.S. rose last month, marking the 6th straight month of growth. According to the Commerce Department, retail sales increased 0.7% in September. That's slightly below August's revised gain of 0.8%. It's also well above economists' expectation of 0.3%. Spending grew across most categories, with sales at specialty stores increasing the most by 3%. Online sales and car purchases also rose 1% last month. And that's it for the Business Minute. And here's a preview of what's coming up in this evening's health report.
In this evening's health report, we look at cancer in children.
Sometimes you may see an increase in maybe a particular type of cancer, but because cancers in children are so infrequent, you really need to take like a 5-year look to see whether there is truly an increase. So right now, I am not finding that there's an increase. We just see different cancers from time to time.
That's the health report in Primetime News at 7. And now for today's healthy living tip. Eat a healthy diet. Choose lots of fruits, veggies, and whole grains. Don't smoke. Avoid secondhand smoke. And don't forget to use your sunscreen.
Time now for the top regional and international stories.
In the region, Antigua and Barbuda and Belize have been included in the European Union list of non-cooperative jurisdictions for tax purposes. This brings to 16 the number of jurisdictions on the EU's list. The EU Council created the list to highlight the number of countries which have failed to exchange tax information upon request. The British Virgin Islands, Costa Rica, and the Marshall Islands were recently removed from the list. On the international scene, there have been anti-Israel protests across the Middle East following a deadly hospital blast in Gaza. Hundreds of people were killed. The Turkish president on Tuesday called on all humanity to take action to stop the unprecedented brutality in Gaza. In a post on X, he said the attack on the hospital was the latest example of Israel's attacks devoid of the most basic human values. And the Pentagon released a video Tuesday that shows Chinese pilots getting dangerously close to a U.S. aircraft. The Pentagon says the intent of flying as close as 20 feet to American jets and firing projectiles is to intimidate pilots. Military leaders are calling on China to stop. And those were the top regional and international stories. I'm Keldisha Williams.
And we head to a quick break. When we come back, Spencer Darlington will have your midday sports report.